It's QAT Car Talk time, episode 30, Mikoku speaking, and today we're just going through a painting process, just genuine painting process, right? I don't have any kind of pointers written down this time, except for the little kind of guidelines that I want to later cover with you guys. But yeah, I felt a little bit remiss with, genuine painting process. Now, of course, it is very, very hard to teach that in one short video. However, we're going to, go maybe through some guidelines and general pointers which might aid you in your concept art or illustration journey. As always, please do keep in mind that any tips and pointers and guidelines given here are separate from our advanced teachings at Focal Point School. However, as always, it is our desire to provide here a little bit of, inspiration, motivation, a little bit of knowledge to make your journey easier as a concept artist or illustrator in this ever demanding industry. What you're seeing here is a digital painting, right? Super obvious. Jesus. Okay. It's a digital painting, which is a result of one of our recorded live sessions. I did this a couple of years ago. This is at the end of the digital intro to digital painting class. So at this time, students went through a lot of intensive trainings, a lot of lectures, and we covered here a lot of knowledge in a very kind of rigorous way in order to be able to output a painting like this. If you remember last time in episode 29, we were covering topics that are slightly disconnected from everyday life. That kind of tool and that kind of procedure might help you in getting better, faster, more efficiently when you're painting something that is of less complexity, something that is not as connected to everyday life. Of course, a landscape like this, we can really relate to it very, very fast, and therefore I believe that painting landscapes is more harder than you might think, because again, our tolerance level for what's good and what's bad is much lower when we're looking at a painting, right? Our brain processes a picture, a photo like this much easier than, for example, when we see an insect, like the example that we gave last time. So I'm going to go through here and talk a little bit about what is actually going on here. And what you see here is the first 14 minutes basically of this video is done in real time. So this is me painting kind of, as we go with the flow. In those first 14 minutes, we are here establishing basically the frame, the composition. Please know that each and every keyword really is connected to a separate lecture on its own. That's why the reason is that's why we always remind, like, hey, this is really separate from our advanced teaching at Focal Point School. But yes, here we have already a profound amount of knowledge. We gained a profound amount of knowledge how to build up a composition, how to build up a solid frame effectively, fast, how to see and understand your own shapes that you're coming up with. And this is then the result, right? You can see that the structure was started with a very kind of loose line drawing. Line drawing and line art, again, is, yet another skill that we go through with the other classes as well. And it's a very reliable to come up with, in my opinion, in our opinion, in a very, very effective way. So what am I trying to kind of point out here is that we often, me and Darek, in the class, always kind of say as well, hey, make the most out of the class. Make the most out of the time that you are with us. We always are very flattered, people coming over from all over the world to join our class, to join our term, made online or physical. However, sometimes I believe that we always can do better. And I think that asking questions, no matter how you feel about it, meaning that in our opinion, there are no stupid questions. will really force you to get better, more efficiently, and faster. Now, where am I getting to? Making the most out of it starts with asking questions, right? So you become aware of what to include in your skill forging. I think that we are making these quick art talk time videos again just for you to make the most out of it. You will make more of it when you watch some of the episodes, or maybe all of them, before you, for example, join our class. Or maybe you are already with us and you want to use this as a complementary tool to aid in your skill management and skill forging and overall improvement. So obviously this is a video that we have done in class, recorded. We are giving this out here in the public, and this is something that we do with a lot of pleasure and a lot of satisfaction, because if we already have a track record that tons of people improved based on the way that we teach, but it's still then knowing it's still nice to like zip that even more a little bit, right, and give you guys tips on this rudimentary level. So all about the class. So this is connected to the Intro to Digital Painting class. I co-run this class with Darek Zaborodzki. I might say that he's even better at making environments. If you know his work, then you know him from his stunning cinematic pieces. So it goes without saying that class, the Intro to Digital Painting class, and the Advanced Digital Painting class is really one of our iconic classes. So in light of that, I wanted to also make this video and kind of like have this complementary session here that is really connected to that class. In the advanced class, we really go as well heavy on design, whereas this, you can see, we keep things really, really grounded and on a very rudimentary level. We are here really hard focusing on the fundamentals and the fundamental skills. So no design elements, no redesigns. We are not photo bashing using 3D. This is just the intro to digital painting, is really forging those hard skills, right? At this point, we are already the 7 minutes. I laid down the line work, as you've seen in the first couple of minutes. Then I made this warm undertone. I think I should have mentioned that earlier. You might have been asking yourself, why are you doing that? Like, why out of nothing, no orange? There is no orange on the photo reference, right? Well, hear me out. That again is belonging to a separate lecture that we go in depth in class, why I do it. But to keep it brief, we sometimes really tackle different technologies, different methods to enrich color and the reinterpretation of reality. Sepia underpaints basically is a technique that has been utilized by also a lot of old masters, and in that way we are mimicking here the color richness that we sometimes perceive in one of these paintings from example Clyde Espevic, which is in my opinion one of these old masters. And I do believe that he was utilizing that method. When you analyze his paintings, you can really see that his reinterpretation of reality was working in a nice, exaggerated way. So you might say that we are using this again as an artistic tool to communicate a certain feeling. With a warmer undertone, I can contrast it later on with cooler colors and tones on top of it, so that my cooler tones will look even more colder and cooler in contrast, so to speak. Now, there is a whole multifaceted lecture that we have in place to like really work with this kind of method in the most efficient way. But again, we have here limited amount of time, and I do want to keep the lecture, the advanced lecture sharing exclusive for the Intro to Digital Painting class, right? So At this point, what I also like to do when it comes to painting, and I think Darek does this as well, is to when we are teaching people how to forge an understanding of your own work, we like to sample details. So you pick here the focal point of your painting. So with that comes, of course, the knowledge how your composition is headed, where do you want the eye to flow, and how to establish that. But what we like to do early on is to teach the students as well how to forge an understanding when it comes to making a nice sample of the detailing. So you can see me that I was indicating a little bit of the rock pattern and the vegetation at the back mountain there, like at the horizon line. That really kind of enables me to start navigating through the painting in a more cohesive way. I don't want to right from the get-go start detailing, as you can see, everywhere, because the reference image is very sharp and has a lot of definition going on. However, we want to make sure that we don't over detail it, because we have a limited amount of time, and we also have a thing going on that in our brain, that even when a certain landscape is very much detailed, right, there is tons of detail going on in the rocks and the grass and the vegetation, our brain processes all that visual data in a very efficient way. And by having that knowledge, you can then manipulate the viewer into kind of enhancing that visual experience by putting more detail at places where you want the eye to flow, and less detail where you want to only use that portion of the painting as a guideline towards that focal point. Yeah, all these topics are, of course, worthy of their own lecture, and this is something that we go through, because these are very, very important tools to keep in mind and be aware of when you end up making your own compositions and your own designs for any given project, right? So see it as a tool, right? This class, the Intro to Digital Painting class and the Advanced Digital Painting class, are basically our tools to provide visual communication. We are using the artistic mind and that artistic skill in order to communicate visually our ideas, inevitably in the end, to our clients, right? This is our goal when we want to become a concept artist. Blocking in here the clouds. I love painting clouds. It's so relaxing. It's one of my, like, if you know my work, you can definitely conclude that, you know, I'm a hardware guy. I love, you know, my spaceships and tanks and mechs, but there is something relaxing and soothing when you are just painting a landscape, right? And just really embracing that artistic flow, that artistic aspect, and where you don't have to necessarily think about visual problem solving. Although on a conscious and unconscious level, I am forging here strong design skills. I'm playing here with color, exaggerating certain colors, exaggerating the value structure, manipulating it towards a way that will be more pleasing to the eye. At least that's what my intention was. I wanted to make this less noisy than the reference image, yet really maintain that same essence. We are finding ourselves in this valley, and I really want the viewer to have this kind, you know, the sense of curiosity and freedom, right? We are really on ground level. We can see that the mountains on both sides are really kind of encapsulating the viewer, and then in the background you have this another colossal monolithic mountain standing and really going through the clouds. So yeah, very engaging, and again triggering my designer's mind. So here we are, like I said, the first 14 minutes were done in real time. So if you notice that, now it got sped up, then you're correct, you're sharp, because this is around 5 times the normal speed. At this stage, I would say that the main frame, the colors, the values are established, and from here on it's detailing, adding complexity, and fixing, keep on forging a better value structure while introducing more fidelity and richness overall, right? This is what we do to really increase the reinterpretation of reality. And again, this is only possible, of course, we believe, and when students can definitely confirm that this becomes easier, this steps becomes easier when you have gone through the more boring subject matters, lectures, and knowledge absorption, so to speak. We go through a lot of theory and a lot of practice. We usually back it up with practical exercises to prove to our students that what we are going through on a theoretical level is not bullshitting you, right? It really becomes helpful, right? Rather than to just teach paintings how to make a beautiful landscape, me and Darek really want to equip you with the right knowledge, tools, and mindset to understand what a successful illustrator or concept artist needs to not only be able to draw beautiful landscapes, but to apply this entire philosophy on a wider spectrum. And that is something that I believe not enough schools are doing, because, well, it is in the end, I think, very, very hard. There are not many concept art schools to begin with, from what I know. So yeah. Maybe what I wanted to say as well and point out before I forget is what I really found challenging is to have a nice balance, and I'm talking about the back mountain there, is have the nice balance between the feeling that the mountain feels covered with vegetation, like that lush, nice feeling. Then we definitely see a rocky pattern sticking through, and there are some pathways of what it seems to be dried up with river pathways. And these rivers, I guess, they become active once, the snow falls and the snow melts. So these rivers are not always filled up with water, I think. From the picture, I can really conclude that we are only here dealing now with a dried out pathway of the river. So yeah. You can see again, a little bit more knowledge is being taken into consideration here, because you can definitely see me even working here with some purples when we are going through that more shaded area where the sun is not reaching it. So again, the forging of understanding how light and materials work and how materials react to light is of profound importance. Like, that is the start of building up your comprehension when it comes to visually communicating your own ideas. So yeah. Let's maybe go here through some kind of guidelines that I wanted to go through. Now that we talked a little bit about, the technical aspect, that the first 14 minutes were real time. Now we are on 5 times speed. Kind of why in this case I did the Sepia underpaint. We talked about establishing the main frame. And of course, each and every topic really deserves its own lecture, but I think at least we are raising here a little bit what to watch out for, right? And what to take into consideration and what to be aware of. Here are the following things that I would also like to cover before we end and wrap up. We still have some time left though. The intention. The intention is something that I will never ignore whenever you start painting. Of course, I like really the spontaneous aspect of, just doodling, just sketching, just, exploring and really kind of, warming up your wrist and really connecting those neurons in your brain to really forge that skill, right? You want that transfer ratio from your brain through your wrist onto the canvas to be as effective as possible. So I'm all down for that, but you can do that any time of the day, right? Even when you're talking or in a meeting. So I'm talking here in cases when you really want to put something on a canvas with an intention. And when you are aware of it, then you are able to start triggering the process of effectiveness and efficiency. So, for example, in this exercise, you might conclude, a beginner might only conclude like, oh, that's nice, a landscape, how to paint a landscape. Oh, yeah, let's paint the landscape. However, we are always teaching our students how to tackle topics and extract the most knowledge out of it. So not only am I just painting a landscape here, but because we went through a lot of other lectures, we are now putting all that knowledge into practice in this exercise so that my result will be not only fast, but efficient, and I will have a larger amount of understanding. So for example, when I am tackling the rocks, painting the rocks, I am very much aware of the material definition of a rock. A rock is, for example, more reflective than the grassy texture and the vegetation that the rocks are placed in. So, for example, with that knowledge, I can now emphasize on making the rocks perhaps feeling more glossy, more reflective than in actuality. So in that way, I become in control what to put more emphasis on. This is a good example of the reinterpretation of reality, right? Clouds, for example, look at the shape of the clouds. In the reference image, you can, for example, see how those clouds are kind of in a random pattern. But when you start analyzing it and you really start understanding that everything is a three-dimensional shape, you see that they become a cohesive pattern. Now, of course, it's very hard to explain that in a couple of minutes video. However, again, this is worthy of another lecture. But what I'm trying to get is to that the clouds are not just random shapes. These are volumetric entities, so to speak. And we can, again, mimic them to our own advantage. So rather than seeing those clouds as a visual challenge obstacle, what you saw me doing is to really extract the essence of that shape and reinterpret that shape so it adds and aids the composition in a more positive manner. Because by now, I hope that you can also see that I'm not exactly copying this whole image, right? At all times, again, I want to activate the designer's mind and be able to reinterpret reality based on the design philosophy that we forge each and every term with our students. So for example, you can see that the mountain is of a different shape. It is going through the clouds in a more kind of profound way, whereas in the image you can see that the peak is kind of awkwardly touching the clouds. But what if we are aware of that it looks nice and beautiful and mystic, and we kind of emphasize on it, right? We make that feature basically stronger by, of course, still abiding to, the rules of how the real world works. So the intention is multifaceted. So I hope that you understand that when you are going to pick a topic, ask yourself questions in what way you are going to benefit from it and what are you going to train. I think it's also very important that now in this day and age, a lot of people might be tempted to, draw just for likes or for the internet or to be trendy. I think that each and every artwork, it doesn't have to be beautiful, right? It is an addition to your visual library. It is an addition to your overall learning curve. And use the majority, for example, of my artworks and designs are just to establish me better as a designer. So when the time comes to really output something with meaning and a stronger intention, I will have a track record of exercises like these in order to output it in the best possible way, right? So again, that goes back to the episode where we talked about starting off easy. Start with something that minimizes the decision making. Here we are working with a painting that is quite cliche, right? It's just relaxed paintings. However, you can already see that even this has a lot of complexity. That's why in the advanced classes we go even deeper and we enhance and introduce design on a very advanced level, and then we end up with really industry standard designs. Also in the advanced classes we mimic and simulate industry standard tasks so that we can equip the students with the skills and the mindset of how they should work and conduct themselves when they find themselves in a professional field, right? Let's go here over some I think I covered this one, but just to be clear, materials and light, right? I'm really here training my materials. So we have, like I said, the rocks, right, which are kind of glossy. We have glossy, like smooth. I smoothen them out in my study, as you can see. On the photo reference, they do appear to have quite a texture going on. But because I want to extract the essence and save time, I am not only using these rocks of my reference, but I'm enabling my overall visual library of what I see rocks, how I understand rocks, basically, and how in general you can utilize that knowledge, right? Because in the previous weeks we really went from material to material, from lighting scenario to lighting scenario, so we don't end up only seeing what we paint but really understanding. That is really here, I guess, the main motto, right? And the reinterpretation of reality is, of course, another one. By this point, I hope that you can once again see that we are not here doing our best to copy each and every shape and texture and go really, paint each and every grass stroke and each texture, but this is really about capturing the essence and emphasizing certain points that are, in my opinion, of greater interest. So, and that is always the case. Doesn't matter on what level you are executing your concept art. It might be landscape explorations, it might be architectural exploration pieces, it might be super detailed vehicles. You are always inevitably reinterpreting reality. And a good concept artist will showcase that in such a way that we will basically fool the audience that it could really exist. That is something that I find always satisfying to execute myself when I work for clients or work for my personal project, and it is even more satisfying when we see students actually getting the grasp of it, right? So yeah. Adding complexity in the midground while leaving here the foreground quite simple also again reinterprets the depth of the painting. On the reference image you can see that there is a limited amount of value structure between the foreground and the midground. And I wanted to kind of mimic that in my painting. Instead of using these cheap soft brush mist to separate the foreground from the midground, I just wanted to experiment with a different technique where we were showing our students that there are multiple ways to kind of manipulate the viewer that we are in space. So I am on purpose here using a similar value structure in the foreground. So now I flip the canvas. So the foreground is here, those rocks in the corner on the left side, those big chunks, and then you see the midground, which you see taking place now, a little bit of brush strokes, but I am increasing the complexity, right? A little bit more definition and suggesting the details. There is a higher amount of complexity when it comes to the patterns of the rocks, and that is yet another way to introduce complexity and to kind of fake depth in your painting. Now, throughout this whole landscape, I assume that the rocks in real life have the same consistent color. It doesn't happen in real life that one rock is super red and the other one is green. I mean, it does happen, but not on a huge scale. So most of the time when you have a mountain range, it consists of a consistent patterning and a consistent color. Now, you can of course conclude that the more you move into distance, those rock formations become of course more bluish. So at the very back of the painting, we can definitely see that atmospherical perspective taking place. Again, another topic that we definitely have saved and that we always keep on improving and updating when in class, because yeah, knowing how to mimic that and to really be able to put your objects in space, be it on the foreground, midground or background and anything in between, yeah, for that we really have to understand the atmospherical features of our planet, so to speak, right? And by understanding that, you can then even visualize objects on alien landscapes by understanding, hey, these are the features of our planet, right? So we even go through lectures like, why is the sky blue? Why is the sunset red, for example? So we go through all these aspects so that we can understand of how to utilize lighting scenarios on different planets, right? Because, well, you might maybe end up working on a project like Mass Effect or Starfield, for example, right? Which is another project that encompasses multiple worlds. So yeah. Yeah, I think, do I miss something? Overall skill forging. Yeah, this is maybe something to end this topic nice to. You are inevitably forging your skills with, again, better fundamentals on a conscious and unconscious level. You are building confidence, guys, really. You are here building a track record and stimulating your brain to become more efficient with your brushstrokes and your output of ideas. And in the end, inevitably, you are building a strong foundation in being a better designer by utilizing these artistic skills and by using these paintings as not your next masterpiece, but make it rather an addition to your journey of becoming a master, hopefully, right? Anyway, guys, I would like you to thank you for watching. This was quite a bit longer than usual, but I hope it gives you a nice idea of what we do in the digital painting classes with Darek. Other than that, I really hope that you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. Hey, don't forget to like and subscribe. I almost forgot that. It really means a lot. Let us know in the comments what you would like to see next. Take care, stay creative, and bye.